Okay.
Hi, this is Scott Reed from the Inn at Pleasant Lake in New London, New Hampshire. Today I'm posting a fun short video on how to repair old plaster and lathe walls in an old inn. Our inn is over 150 years old, and sometimes you have no choice but to try to just repair the plaster and lathe walls. If you can, of course, by all means, tear down all your plaster and lathe and go with new sheetrock. That'll be a lot easier, but sometimes you just don't have a choice. And so I found this technique by working on this beautiful old inn, and I thought I would just share it with everybody because it really works great. So here you go. When you're looking at your walls, sometimes you come across a patch where if you push on it, it's soft and it moves, and you can actually kind of hear it banging, and there's a little bit of a space. And so what has happened is the plaster has gotten old and it's fallen behind the lathe boards, and there's nothing holding the actual old plaster to the lathe boards. So this technique I've come up with is very simple. You need an awl or a screwdriver, something that'll poke a little bit of a hole. And then you need construction adhesive, like liquid nails or some form of construction adhesive. I always like to have some paper towels with me. So it's pretty simple. The lathe boards are typically 1.5 inches wide. And then there's a space, about a 1/4 inch space between them that they squeeze the plaster between when they're putting the walls up. So what I do is I start to try to find where that lathe board is. And if I hit it, I keep looking until I find the space. And then I know I've found that space right between the lathe board, and I know that board's about 1.5 inches, so I'm going to try to get it on both sides. So what I do is I make a little bit of a hole, I widen it out just a little bit, and I try to get a little on both sides, and I get a little bit of a hole there. And then I'll do the same about 1.5 inches higher, and I'm trying to get in between the plaster and the lathe. And I just try to blow it out a little bit for some adhesion. And then I take the construction adhesive, and you got to go at a bit of an angle. You're trying to get it between the plaster and the lathe boards. And I'll squeeze some in there. And sometimes you can see the wall just push out a little bit. You know you're doing a good job then. And I'll try to get it at all different angles so that I'm getting as much surface as I can. And I get it, then I find that crack again. I try to get the construction adhesive to go in between the crack, just like the lathe would, the plaster in the lathe. And I find if you do one on the bottom and then one on the top, you're getting a good grip around that old lathe board. Then I'll smooth out the adhesive. You don't want this to be smooth to the wall so much, because you're going to kind of patch up the wall a little bit afterwards. It's okay to leave a little bit of a hole. And that's it for that stage. Obviously, this won't work so well if you're going to paint the walls, but most of the time with old plaster and lathe walls, you're going to wallpaper over them anyways. So what I would do after this is I would come along with some joint compound or some filler and make that a little bit more flush to the wall, and then I can wallpaper over it and the wall won't bounce. Well, thanks very much for watching the video today. I hope you found it helpful. Having owned several old homes, it's taken me 25 years to figure out this little technique. Hope it's helpful. Thanks.